Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Peter Abraham. I am a second career registered nurse with extensive hospice and palliative care experience. I am a book author and I'm currently on the journey of being an end-of-life doula, sometimes referred to as a death doula. We help patients, families, caregivers bridge the knowledge gaps that's often not filled by other means. If you're new to this channel, welcome and thank you so much for coming and visiting. In this channel, we have discussions dealing with chronic illness, terminal illness, tips for hospice nurses, holistic nurses, caregivers, family members, and other people like myself going down the road to become a death doula. In fact, today's topic is an update of my journey so far. Now, before we go into today's topic, I like to pause in every discussion that we have and ask the question, what are you grateful for? Over the years, I've had numerous people ask me, and a lot of times it's the family member or visiting friends, it takes a special person to be in hospice, and how do you do it? You know, you're dealing with death day in and day out. And to be honest, it would be very rare for one of my patients to die in my presence. That's part of the reason why I'm going down the doula route. Not that I want to see somebody die in my presence, but it's because even though for me, and I was one of those unique nurses that would spend an hour to an hour and a half with my patient and caregiver and family members, hospice is more and more pushing for those 30-minute, 45-minute max visits. And so it's very rare for us to be there. And so I found over the years, one of the ways to build resilience. Now, the meaning of the word resilience is you get hit by a storm. I'm not necessarily talking rain and thunder, but you get hit by a storm in life and you can bounce back. Maybe not the same minute or the same day or the next, but you're more likely to recover and less likely to get depression, clinical depression, and want to go down very dark and dreary path, including thinking about suicide. And so I find for me, my faith in Christ Jesus, by looking at areas of forgiveness and by asking, what am I grateful for, sometimes several times a day. So what are you grateful for as you're watching this video? You don't have to, if you want to put in the comments below, we could have a dialogue exchange. This is a non-judgmental channel. Now, as it relates to what am I grateful for, several things. My wife and I, our daughters and her husband are coming to visit. They probably have an hour, maybe 2 hours more to go at the time of this filming to come from Pennsylvania. They're in the Philadelphia area coming towards central Kentucky to visit for several days. So I'm so grateful for them coming to visit and the time that we'll spend together. I'm grateful that I was able to submit to Amazon the paperback and hardcover versions of Crucial End-of-Life Conversations, a compassionate guide for end-of-life professionals to help anyone who's working in the field of end-of-life, including volunteers, how to have these crucial, critical conversations and help the family and caregivers and others get through common questions such as, you know, my mom's not eating, my dad's not drinking, IV fluids, and other topics that while Barbara Carnes, and I appreciate her so deeply for her books, these are light, I don't know how to word them because I don't want to say it in a way that comes across as if there's something wrong with the books. But these are written for family support, especially if they're in crisis, written at the 5th grade reading level. My books are written more in the 8th to 10th grade reading level for the most part. And they're mainly written for these books to support the end-of-life professionals. How do I help the family get through? And we talked about in previous episodes on having these conversations, in some cases, can extend life by as much as 25%. So in a 6-month window, that's 7.5 months. You just added a month and a half by having these critical conversations. So I'm grateful that that's now being reviewed by Amazon, and that should be available to the general public, as well as for me to order an author copy over the next 72 hours. And it may be available at the time that you see this on YouTube. So if you go out there and look for crucial end-of-life conversations and you see Peter Abraham as the author, you probably found the right book on Amazon. And I'm also grateful for just I cannot speak highly enough of the International Doula Life Movement. I was just reviewing, it's a 32 module, 12-week course. Plus you get the Business 101 to seven additional modules. And all of the instructors are doing such a wonderful job and being very thorough. And I had the opportunity this week. I was on the Senior Care Confidential podcast with Joe of Joy Care Management out of McKinney, Texas. I had the opportunity to be on another podcast on Monday. And these are just wonderful conversations. And this is where I am going to lead into where we at with Compassion Crossing and my doula journey. So I don't always know how to word things verbally. I'm better in written format. And granted, that's my own opinion. But I'm an introvert at heart. I'd rather email if I can email. Read it on the web if I can. Call on the phone. But doing anything in person. And I was literally sharing with somebody the other day about public speaking, where I did do this when I was operating and running Dynamic Net Inc. I'd go to the Rotary Club and I'd be in front of a podium, and I still remember the one presentation I gave where I am not kidding you, and it's not that I'm proud of this, but I've shared in other episodes, I'm a broken human being like everybody else. My knees were literally knocking against one another. And I still remember the young ladies that was in the table in front of me where they could actually look underneath the podium. It wasn't a solid podium. And they saw my knees shaking and they started laughing as they're pointing. No pressure. That didn't make it worse, right? And I'm not sharing this to you to have you scared of, I'm never going to do this. And also what they tell you about picturing people in different conditions, that doesn't work, for at least for me, with my autism and other things going on. But I share that from the perspective that if I, who can be afraid of my own shadow at times, I, who wants to shrink in the crowd, can go out there and network and become vulnerable and take a chance that just maybe this one time will be different, and do that over again, even if the previous times were ha ha ha. If I can do that, and I'm nobody special, you can too. Part of why I'm putting these videos out is not to just say, here, buy a book. I appreciate that if you do. But it's also to encourage you who are looking at taking these journeys. For several reasons. I'm part of being an INFJ is multi-layers, layers of an onion. I rarely do things for a single reason. They're usually multiple. So I was sharing on the Senior Care Confidential podcast, one of the reasons I started writing the entire Bridges to Eternity. These are just the first two books. Book number one. Oh my word, I don't know my right from the left. Book number one, book number two. This is actually both books combined. Oh my word. And I started writing all these other books. I ended up going down this road of being a death doula, and I actually I was doing it without knowing that it's called a death doula. Last year, I was helping people on this journey, not giving a name to the what I was doing, and then I found out, oh, this is what it's called, And then I recalled, and I shared this with Joe on Joy Care Management and that Senior Care Confidential podcast, that I worked with doulas when I was with Grain Hospice. I worked with doulas in the past, and they improved the outcome so tremendously. But at the time that I was doing this last year, I actually forgot that they were a doula. Um, you can tease me if you want in terms of some of my memory issues. I take notes for a reason. So, but I started going down this journey because I'm doing research on, do you need certification? Do you need schooling? I'm a hospice and palliative care RN. What do I need and why? And it's not that I mind paying the right person for the right resources, but I don't know how to I don't know how to say it other than just say it. But I am extremely good as a hospice and palliative care nurse. I share that based on family input and caregiver input, and just the overall the reviews that I've had over the years. I still remember Kimberly Arnell, who's now high up in the Emeritus chain of command, saying, Peter, your families love you. And I've had cases where family members would tell me, when I came in, they were getting ready to leave the agency, the hospice agency. You can do that. Your hospice is an elective service. They were ready to revoke, and then I came on board. And part of what made me different, so to speak, is I would take the time. To me, it was not checkbox. I am a checklist person. But the caregivers, the patient, the family members was never a checkbox. It was, how can I help you? It was observing for body language, for even if they didn't know what to ask, and then asking them, it looks like you're nervous or it looks like you're anxious, and just really diving in and getting on their level. And I still remember the time in Glen Rock where I was there for almost 4 hours with the family. And yes, I got yelled at by my manager lightly. It wasn't a write-up. It wasn't a physical write-up. It was a verbal chastisement. I shouldn't have been there that long. Now, as a doula, guess what? I could be there that long. But that's the type of nurse I was. It's the human meant more than the machine, meant more than a lot of other things. So I don't want to go on too much down that rabbit trail. But so here I'm looking at what's involved. Can't I do this without going to school? And so I started doing more and more homework and taking free webinars and just lots and lots of reading. And I'm seeing the schools that are out there. And as I talk about schools, I want to be very clear. I am not dismissing, demeaning, knocking, or otherwise putting a school in a bad way. I don't want to state that one school is horrible and another, this is the only school you can go to. I don't want to do that ever. I'm biased for IDLM, but I don't want to go and say this school is, all these other schools are bad. What I was noticing was a couple things. I was noticing, one, the price variation was tremendous, gigantic. Anything from a couple $100s to over $8,000. I shouldn't say talking, I was emailing back and forth with Joe from Joe Care Management this morning. They offer a lot for any of you that are in the McKinney, Dallas, Texas area. They saw a course that was just a weekend course for $10,000. That's a month vacation for those who can afford it. I was on a webinar I appreciate the founder of, and I'm not going to name names, I appreciate the founder of this one school, of 20, 30 years, oncology nurse, wonderful, wonderful experiences, but $8,000 It might be $7,997, but if you take it over the next 72 hours, it's $2,997. And actually, what participated was a 4-hour webinar. And the first 3 hours was wonderful. This is where I'm trying to look at the positives. The education for the first 3 hours was top notch. I learned things that I did not know. But the last hour of the 4 hour was a hard sale. And what set me off on writing the books and trying to fill in gaps is the person who was presenting was comparing the original $7,997 to the cost of becoming a registered nurse. If you are a registered nurse or a licensed practical nurse, that apples to orange comparison should have you livid. It should have you livid, through the roof, livid, screaming, livid. Why? Because as a licensed practical nurse, as a registered nurse, you went to an accredited school that has a governing body, and that national boards that you took, the NCLEX, whether it's the NCLEX PN for LPNs or the NCLEX RN for RNs, it's the same test in all 50 states. Not saying you get asked the same questions because of the way the test operates, but it's the same test. And whether if you pass that test in Pennsylvania, California, Texas, Kentucky, you have the same baseline knowledge as everyone else who passed that test. That is non-existent. Doesn't exist for death doulas. No offense, how dare you do an apples to orange comparison of that gross nature? Because a registered nurse, she was comparing it to RN school. Registered nurse school, you have prerequisites that for most people take 1 to 2, sometimes 3 years if you're doing it part-time. Now, I'm the geeky nerd that I did this full-time, and so I did it in less than a year for my prerequisites, but there are many who went down the registered nursing route who had to get the chemistry, the anatomy and physiology, the biology, the microbiology courses. And that took them 2 years, and then they take another 2 years for an associate degree, so that's an associate degree that's a 4-year to get there. Don't you dare compare. Those of you who went for a BSN, now again, I'm the geeky nerd. I went to Capella where you can go at your own pace. So I completed it in 6 months and 2 weeks. But that's still not a comparison for something that even if you give a year-long course, you are sorry, unbelievably wrong. Apples to oranges, and grossly negligent because you are comparing something that has no accreditation, no governing body. And yes, this does piss me off. Because it is, as an RN, you should know better to compare it to RN school. And if you're watching this, I'm not trying to offend you, but this is where consumers need to know more. And that's part of why I started going down this endeavor, because that certification of I'm a certified end-of-life doula, as of June of 2025, that's a graduation certificate. That is all that it means. It is a graduation certificate. A graduation certificate from your school, not a national body, not a state body, not a federal body, not an international body. And the fine print, I wish we lived in the world of no fine print. The fine print, National End-of-Life Doula License, you get the proficiency badge. They're the only independent organization that I hope one day, that if things don't change too radically for how they operate, they might be the end result. They might be an accrediting body. They might be the governing body because they are independent of any school. But they have a self-study guide. You can join their program, become a member for $50. Wait 72 hours, and they have this on their website. Link will be in the description below. You pay $50, you wait 72 hours, and I would add the fine print, you validate you're listed. And in the meantime, you're doing their free study guide and take their proficiency badge test for $115, 165 totals. You're now certified. Sadly, that certification means you graduated from, it's not a school, but you graduated from them. It does not mean the same thing as like a certified public accountant or a licensed professional. So moving on, and I'm sorry if that portion went a little bit too long, but moving on in terms of my journey, I'm networking, I'm going to business events. So every Friday I go to a men's breakfast. It's not business discussion, but we'll get into some of those topics. Every third Tuesday of the month, so I'll be going next week. There's a local business coffee get together, and so I'm doing that. And then I'm networking on LinkedIn, and I had an assistant director reach out to me wanting to know more about what I could do education-wise to help their team members know about hospice and palliative care. So I took the leap. I took the leap. I'm still going through the program for my DLM. I am not certified. I'm not. I shared before in previous episodes. I was believing I was going to wait until I graduated, but I have an opportunity come up. So I took the opportunity. So in early July, I'll be doing a 2-hour presentation. It's 1 hour each, but 2 groups back to back, where I'll be discussing what it's like. What do caregivers need to be aware of, when to call the hospice provider that the patient picked, and so on and so forth, and dealing with grief and anticipatory grief and other topics. So part of my encouragement to you who's watching this is a couple of things. One, research what school you want to go to. I appreciate if you buy my books, but you don't have to. And I will be the first person to say my books are not a replacement for a good school. I believe they're supplemental material, or if you want to get off the ground and then go to school. But research schools, network, get your name out there. I don't even have business cards. I'm looking into that today. What's it take to get business cards? I'm still fighting the personal cell phone versus using an app that was called Slider. You can use another number, Zoom, and so on. I'm going through that. But get out there. Don't be afraid to say yes. I did start volunteering for a local hospice provider. Last Sunday was my first time doing that independently. This coming Tuesday, I'm going to be meeting up with a social worker to go meet with a family for doing companion volunteering. And then that Sunday, I'm going to be volunteering at the front desk again. So I'm doing that. I'm volunteering in the community. I don't think I have tongue-tied. I think next week too, or it might be the week after, I'm going to a local funeral homes having lunch and learn. So I'm going to go to that lunch and learn and introduce myself that I'm an end-of-life doula. So get out there and network and do that. As you're out there, I know it's putting yourself on the line. I know that. I'm just reflecting this past Monday. We had an amazing class. The entire experience with the International Doula Life Movement has been amazing. And we broke out after the class was over and was discussing, do you work for hospice providers, or do you work independently? How do you get out there and network? And I know that could be scary for many, especially if you are introverted like me and can be shy under stress and pressure. But as you're walking this journey, I want you to encourage you to reach out to me. You reach out to me. I'll put my link from LinkedIn in the description below. I don't mind helping. I've offered a number of people. For right now, I'm in a position where I can help people freely. I want to continue doing that as I'm able. So it might be, like, to give you an example of how that worked today, and I'm not talking about doula, I had a hospice nurse reach out to me via Facebook Messenger. Peter, I have young cancer patients between, this age and that age, and I'm really struggling with families trying to pressure IV fluids at the end of life. Could we brainstorm how to work through this situation? And I'm helping her, and this is not done for a monetary event. And as I share this, I'm not rich, and I'm not intending to do this for free. I can't guarantee free every single occasion, but I'm the type of person that I'd rather help lift somebody up when I'm able. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. I do appreciate and thank you for your time. Thank you. God bless and bye.